Hello, this is Emeka Wonye. I am the founder of the Due Process Advocates, DPA, and I am a lawyer, both in Nigeria and in the United States. In the past few days, I have received so many calls, so many requests coming from DPA members, from Nigeria mainly, but also from other parts of the world. They all have one concern or one question they asked me. They wanted me to shed some light on the so-called the bill pending before the Nigerian legislature, which is intended to govern NGOs in Nigeria. Fair enough. It is true. The Nigerian legislature is currently considering a bill, and quite seriously. The purpose of that bill is to regulate NGOs and their activities in Nigeria. There is a widespread outcry by many Nigerians who are afraid of the true intentions behind this bill. So it's natural that it's going to become a concern for DPA members once it's a concern for Nigerians. Why would Nigeria have such law? It's not so much of a surprise. NGOs are an important part of modern societies. They perform extraordinarily important functions. They complement government in all spheres of public good. They work for social justice, they promote human rights, they address issues of inequality, gender discrimination, and they supply needed help to disadvantaged people, people involved in disaster, people involved in crisis, refugees, and all that. So NGOs are extremely important. NGOs come in different forms. Mainly, they are somehow affiliated. Majority of them are affiliated with some religious groups, either Christian faith or Islamic faith. All of them somehow have their own NGOs catering for the interests of their members or maybe the general public. So their functions are important. It should be a concern of every government. Every government should be interested in what the NGOs do, and there will be need on the part of every government to have some order in terms of the activities of the NGOs. And we looked and discovered that in the past 10 to 15 years, many countries of the world enacted new legislation to regulate the activities of NGOs. These countries range from Russia to South Africa to China and Brazil. So it's not so much of a surprise that Nigeria should seek to have a law to govern NGOs. Indeed, that is a belated measure. It should have been that such law should have been in place all this while for a country the size of Nigeria. So the need to regulate NGOs is clear. We understand that. The importance of doing it at this time in Nigeria is also very important. We understand it. That's not the problem. The problem has to do with the contents of the bill, which is before the Nigerian legislature at the moment. So you have to look into what the bill says to truly understand whether to support it or to oppose it. It is quite alarming when you look into the contents of the Nigerian bill. It contains extraordinary things that should give you a cause for concern. It creates this commission, this government agency that's supposed to regulate NGOs. And it gives it all kind of powers, which exceeds powers the government should have, even under the Constitution. So they now want everybody who wants to run an NGO to register, which is fair enough, to have an address of the members of the governing council, which is fair enough. But also went as far as wanting to control everything that an NGO does. They want to think for the NGO. So this is the problem with Nigeria and its new law, its bill. A good legislature or a good legislative organ of government interested in regulating NGOs' activities supposed to sit down first and foremost and get a clear understanding of what it wants to do. It has to demarcate between things it wants to suppress and things it wants to promote. Because certainly there are potentials of abuses of NGO role, which is why it is important to have them regulated somehow. But the government has to make sure It knows precisely what it should encourage and what it should prohibit, what it should suppress and what it should promote. And this is exactly where the Nigerian lawmakers got it wrong. Indeed, it seems that the government is more interested in controlling the opposition, in controlling dissenting opinions in society, rather than regulating against abuses of NGOs. This shouldn't be a difficult thing for Nigeria because many other countries have passed similar laws. Nigeria only needs to look at what other countries have done and try to borrow from them and try to improve on what they have done. But apparently Nigeria goes off on its own unique course, creates a monster of an agency to regulate NGOs, smothers organizations and groups that could form NGOs, suppresses human rights, far exceeding what the Constitution allows them. So, Nigerians are concerned, and genuinely so. And if Nigerians are concerned, DPA members are going to be concerned. I have looked at the content of this bill, and I totally disagree with it. I think it's unacceptable. We need to be very careful what we do in Nigeria. We need to make sure that the government does not use the opportunity of this new bill to take away the freedoms and liberties that the new technology, information technology such as the internet, has given to Nigerian people. So ultimately, it boils down to the old and classic debate of power. Who should have the power? The government or the people? Who do you trust with power? From this bill, Nigerian government is claiming all the powers, assuming so much power and taking away everything from the individual. That is why we must oppose it. We will not allow any law in Nigeria to take away fundamental freedoms, such as the freedom of association and the freedom of speech. That is exactly what this bill will take away if you allow this bill to become law. So, Nigerians are supposed to be aware, they're supposed to be sensitive to what is going on. They need to understand that the government is using the opportunity of this law to take away power from individuals, from the people. Nigeria is supposed to be a democracy. We're supposed to be under a constitutional government, which has a portion of it dealing with fundamental human rights. Nigeria is supposed to facilitate and promote liberties and freedoms, not to take away the little that the people have got. That is why we think that this bill is unacceptable. In fact, I wonder if the lawmakers actually thought about it, if they actually sat down and if they understood what they were doing, and if they asked themselves the real question, who do they represent? If the lawmakers represent the people, they should do everything to back away from this particular troubling bill out there. Are there issues to be worried about? Yes. One particular area to be worried about is that certain abuses exist already. We see this on the internet. We see how easy it is for somebody to create a blog and begin to smear people and to lie against people. But the person that created that blog has no address. So those who are injured by their slanderous publications cannot sue them. That is what the law is supposed to focus on. Anybody who has a group or following of up to 5,000 people should have an address. That address should be registered. Once they go there and register the address and identify who the leaders are, then let the law allow the victims to protect themselves. Otherwise, you'll be throwing away the bad bathwater with the baby. We don't want that. And I will say this before I end. As a lawyer, I always have that extra angle. If this bill goes all the way to being passed by the legislature and it goes all the way to being signed by the president of Nigeria into law, that leaves us one option, one final option. We are going to go to court. We are going to request the court to nullify such law on the ground that it is inconsistent with the Constitution. And what part of the Constitution would that bill be contrary to? That would be the part of the Constitution that deals with liberty and human freedom. So one challenge every lawmaker knows is, don't ever make a law that is too wide. We call it overbreadth. When the law is too wide, it covers what is intended to cover. It includes, it attacks the good as well as the bad. So instead of a good law should suppress bad things, the mischief. But a bad law suppresses both the good and the bad. We think that the current bill before the National Assembly in Nigeria suppresses a lot of good things. We will never accept the government to control virtually everything that amounts to taking away every known liberty. We'll oppose it. Now we oppose it politically. Call your lawmaker, send him an inbox message, let him understand that the people of Nigeria oppose that bill as it is. And if they go ahead and pass it, let us prepare for battle in the court of law. Thank you so much. This is the position of the DPA members. We will not fold our arms and watch the Nigerian lawmakers take away the liberty that the Constitution has granted to the people. God bless you. Goodbye.